still working or? Oh wait, I got it.
So winter has arrived, and this is probably my favorite time of the year to shoot. The nights are long and the sun sets early, making it easier to do street photography after dark. When it comes to settings, my first piece of advice is to shoot RAW. Now I know a lot of you prefer shooting JPEGs because it's easier and it takes up less space. But when it comes to shooting at nighttime, you're really going to want as much dynamic range and data in those image files because that's going to make editing much easier. Most modern digital sensors are really good at bringing details out of dark shadows. So even if you took a photo and it's really dark, you can bring it into Lightroom or whichever photo editing software you're using and bring the details back out of those shadows. JPEG files are more compressed, so if you're shooting in JPEG and you bring those into an editing software, there's going to be less dynamic range and data to play with. Another good reason to shoot RAW is white balance. At nighttime, with all the different artificial light going around, it's very easy for your camera to get the white balance wrong, as it can easily get confused. If you shoot JPEG, the white balance is baked into the image, whereas if you shoot RAW, you can easily change the white balance in post. Second up, don't be afraid to push your ISO high when shooting at nighttime. Pretty much all of my shots are between 1600 and 6400 ISO, and where needed I go higher. Honestly, the digital noise these days doesn't look so bad, and you can really clean up that noise in post as well. It's better to have a noisy photo, as you can fix that in post, compared to a blurry photo which you can't really do anything with. When it comes to my shutter speed and aperture, my aim is to get as much light into the sensor as possible without bringing in much blur. So my minimum shutter speed is a 60th of a second. I usually can get still images at this shutter speed, but this can depend on the lens you're using and also how steady you can hold your hand. Using burst mode also helps. So if you're shooting, let's say at a 60th of a second and you're using a high burst rate, the likelihood is one of those frames is going to be sharp. When it comes to the aperture, I shoot wide open usually at nighttime. So if I have a f1.2 lens, I shoot at f1.2. If it's 2.8, I shoot at 2.8. Now, you do not need an expensive prime lens to shoot at nighttime. I've taken some of my favorite shots at nighttime on a Fujifilm zoom lens, which is f2.8. You can get really creative at nighttime by reducing the shutter speed. If you want to introduce some blur into your photos, then move your shutter speed down to a 15th or a 30th of a second. When it comes to which focal length to use at nighttime, this is down to personal taste, and I often mix it up. So sometimes I go out with a wide lens and sometimes I go out with a longer lens. But if you are starting out, I'd say go with a longer lens. For example, on Fujifilm, I'd say go with a 50mm lens and above, because it means you don't have to get as close to your subject and it makes photography at nighttime easier. Now, as for autofocus and manual focus, more often than not, I'm using autofocus because for most scenes, even on Fujifilm, it's actually pretty reliable and it does a pretty good job at capturing what I wanted to capture. But with that said, there are occasions where I switch over to manual focus, because with autofocus, often it will focus on the thing closest to you. Whereas if I'm shooting through a window, let's say, using manual focus can often be more accurate because I can pinpoint exactly what and where I want to focus. So I do recommend using autofocus, but also do know how to use manual focus, because especially at nighttime, the AF can get confused and you are going to want to know how to manual focus on a subject so you can override it when you need to. Another thing I'd recommend is not to use headphones or earphones and listen to music while you're out doing street photography at nighttime. At nighttime, you're going to want to be as aware as you possibly can of your surroundings and settings. And if you have music in your ears and headphones on, you're going to be less aware of what's going on around you. So both for your photography and for your safety, I just recommend keeping the headphones in your pocket until you're no longer shooting. Also, when it comes to safety, I'd say bring a bag with you. I like to bring a small side bag. There's no photo that's worth risking your safety or camera for. So if you're in a place and you feel unsafe, just slip the camera into your bag. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and you're probably going to be okay. When it comes to choosing what to shoot at nighttime, once you come across a scene with interesting light, there's a couple of things you probably want to do. Firstly, if it's a scene with a window, so this could be a shop front, a bus, anything like that, you can shoot into the window. So from outside, you're capturing what's going on inside. Next up is to capture subjects being lit by artificial light. So this can be light coming from a shop front. This can be light coming from a headlight. This can be light coming from a bus stop, brake lights. There's so many possibilities with this, but the angle you capture your subject in relation to the light is going to make all of the difference. Now, if you place your subject in front of the light, your subject's going to be a silhouette. If you capture the same subject, but you're stood in front of them, so half of their face is being lit, that's going to lead to a very different type of photo. Another thing you're going to want to look out for is capturing negative space. So negative space, especially when shooting at nighttime, will probably be large areas of darkness within your frame. So don't be afraid of just having a small area of light and then a large area of just darkness surrounding it, as that negative space is both going to add interest to your photo and also draw your viewer's eye to the specific point of light in your photo. And finally, I'm looking for colors which can bring emotion into an image. So a red light shining onto your subject's face, that's going to immediately tell a story and bring some emotion into a photo. Or if it's a blue light shining onto somebody's face, that can convey a feeling of sadness or loneliness. I really recommend going out to shoot at nighttime if it's raining or if it's been raining during the daytime. Once the floors are wet, all of the light from the shop fronts, the car lights, and the street lamps, it all reflects off the floor and into the puddles. So you can get really creative with your scenes and capturing lights in a different way. In general, there's more light because it's bouncing off the surface of the floor, and you can capture some really creative abstract shots as well. Briefly before going on, all of the photos you see in this episode were edited using my preset pack Fujifilm. If you're interested and want to support this channel, I have a link to the preset pack in the description below. Also, if you are finding this episode helpful, you can really support the channel by hitting the thumbs up button. And if you want more photography related episodes, remember to subscribe as well. Alright, so one of the most important things when it comes to street photography at nighttime is to find the right locations to shoot in. Obviously, at nighttime there is less light than there is during the daytime, so your options are going to be more limited. In a way, this makes street photography at night easier because there's going to be fewer places to shoot than there is during the daytime. During the daytime, the possibilities are endless, whereas at nighttime, you have to be more selective as most areas aren't well lit, or if they are lit, it's not very interesting. So when you do come across an area with interesting lighting, you really are going to want to spend a bit of time there capturing that light and the subjects there in interesting ways. Now, what I recommend doing is really researching interesting areas to go out and do street photography at nighttime before you even leave your house. For example, if I'm traveling, I'll do a bit of research into where's the areas of the city which are pretty lively at nighttime or where there's lots of people. This is usually a good indicator of where you're going to find areas of interest and light. It's not to say you have to shoot in busy city centers. It's just if you want to improve your chances of getting good shots at nighttime, you should go to areas which are well lit and have interesting light already. Essentially, when you're out doing street photography at nighttime, you're hunting for interesting light rather than always looking for interesting characters and compositions. Once you find the interesting light, then you can start developing a composition and then wait for the right subject to come into frame. Now, something I do recommend you do when you do find an interesting location is to use the fishing technique. Now, this is a technique I still use and is also great for beginners, as shooting at nighttime can sometimes be a bit more difficult. So what you do is you set up your scene and your composition and you just wait until your subject walks in the frame. Generally speaking, it's much easier to just stand there with your camera and wait for a subject to walk into the frame than it is to walk up to a person at nighttime and take a photo of them. So this shot here you're seeing on screen, this is an example of where I stood in this place and just waited into the right subject walked into the frame. Another good tip before you even head out to shoot at night is to have a good idea of what you want to capture before you even go out. Now, what I like to do is I'll watch a couple of films which have some really interesting night scenes, or I head into a website like Shot Deck and I check out some scenes from films at nighttime, and that will inspire me before I head out. So I kind of have an idea in my head of which scenes I want to find and what kind of stuff I want to capture. And the main reason I do this is, unlike shooting at daytime where when you take a photo and you look at it on the back of your camera, you have a pretty good idea of what the end result's going to be after you edit it. Whereas with shots you take at nighttime, the photo you take, it can look vastly different to the edited version. So at nighttime especially, it can be hard to visualize the end result as you're taking the photo. Alright, so after you've prepared and you have all of your settings and gear in place, when you actually go out to shoot, there are a couple of things you're going to want to look out for. Firstly, always protect your highlights. Digital sensors are really good at pulling details out of shadows, but not so good when it comes to pulling details out of blown out highlights. And because there's such a big contrast between the dark areas and light areas of your photos, your camera can often get confused and it can end up blowing out the highlights or making the whole image too dark. Now you can use your aperture, shutter speed and ISO to balance out your photo, but in a lot of cases, especially when you're doing street photography at nighttime and the scenes are changing rapidly, you might want to use your exposure compensation dial to quickly underexpose the image to balance it out and to save the details in the highlights. As I said earlier, as long as you're shooting a raw file, you can bring that into an editing app like Lightroom and bring most of those details out of the shadow pretty easily. The next and final phase when it comes to street photography at nighttime is editing. When it comes to editing, always remember that you are shooting night scenes, so you don't have to bring up all the shadows in the scene. Leaving shadows and leaving darkness in a photo can really help tell a story and can really add some intrigue and interest to it too. Secondly, the biggest issue I usually have when I'm editing is bringing the colors and lights in the scene into some sort of order and cohesion. Often when you're shooting at nighttime, there's loads of different lights, different color temperatures, different colors, and that can make for quite a messy scene and a messy photograph. So in editing, sometimes I'm completely removing colors, I'm moving the reds and oranges closer together, I might be taking out purples or changing purples to blues. There's countless different variations, but I do recommend looking into things like color theory, having a color wheel, and really developing a good understanding of which colors work together. Alright, so that's my brief guide to shooting at nighttime. If you have any further questions, drop them below and I'll do my best to get back to you. A huge thanks for watching this, and I will catch you in the next one.